Hi, and welcome to the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinsko, and I'm an advisor, best-selling author, speaker, and general explorer when it comes to customer and employee experience. I'm really interested in figuring out what it takes to build organizations that produce better outcomes for both customers and employees. So with that in mind, I seek out and interview CEOs, entrepreneurs, business and tech leaders, authors and academics to uncover some clues about what it takes to build such an organization. Now, some of you may know the podcast as the Rare Business Podcast, but I decided to rename and rebrand the podcast recently. This is for a number of reasons. First one was to mirror the title of my book, Punk CX, which was published in June 2019. Two, because I'm a fan of punk music. And three, it's just more fun, right? Anyway, if this is your first time listening to one of these interviews, then hello and welcome. And please do dive into the archives at adrianswinsko.com, as I've now completed over 300 of these interviews in the last few years. If this is not your first time listening, then welcome back and thank you. Anyway, that's enough for me right now. Let's get into the interview. So welcome to the next edition of the podcast. Today I am joined by a gentleman by the name of Mads Fosselius, who is the CEO and co-founder of Dixa. Hey Mads, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, and thanks so much for having me on the show.
You are very welcome, sir. Now, what I always like to do at the beginning of these interviews is actually to ask people to give us a bit of a thumbnail sketch on who they are and sort of and the work that you do, just so we get a bit of background and context before we dive into some of the things that we're here to talk about today. So if you could do that for us, Mads, that'd be awesome.
Yes, definitely. So I am a serial entrepreneur, as it's sometimes pronounced when you are a entrepreneurial person that has started several businesses. So I've done that since I was 20, and today I am 40. So that's 20 scary years in the customer service industry.
Right.
So I've seen everything from old school call centers to fairly modern ticketing systems, and many vendors come and go, and seen the horrors, but also some of the delight of customer experience.
Mm-hmm. And so now you're kind of you're in this kind of you've got this business. It's called Dixa. Before we actually kind of get into you tell me kind of what Dixa is all about. I mean, first of all, I have to I believe that congratulations in order, because you've just received a big fat check to the value of about $36 million for Series B funding round. That's right, yes?
That's correct, and thank you so much. We're very proud. We just closed and announced our Series B, led by Notion Capital in London. So we're very proud about that. It's a great partner to get on board, and it also means that we can now really live our dreams about building the next generation customer service platform. And also spread the customer friendship, which is what Dixa is all about, which of course I will tell you more about. So that means a lot to us, and also to the entire team in Copenhagen and London and Ukraine. So
basically, the world domination is ahead then.
Yeah, that's the very I would say ambitious plan to definitely be the world leader within what we will call a conversational customer engagement space.
Right.
Kind of disrupting the way that that we're seeing modern customer service going forward.
We can link to that. That's interesting, because you talk about this conversational sort of approach, but you've also talked about this idea that we're moving from the like what you call a ticketing age to a conversational age. And I was thinking about that, and I was like going, oh, poor tickets. But can you tell me what you mean by that? Kind of like this move from the ticketing age to the conversational kind of age, and kind of so what are the implications about all of that?
Definitely. I will actually take it one more decade back. So when I was at least 20 years old, I was working in the call center as actually a system developer. So actually coming from a very nerdy background, building applications on big call center solutions. At
So
that
you're the
time,
one that you're at fault for almost making kind of an agent's desktop look like,
yes.
some sort
So
of a maze or something. So it's your fault.
exactly.
You are atoning for the sins of the past then, Mads.
Yes, I'm trying to make up for them. I'm very
Blimey.
guilty. I'm very guilty
It's a
in building
confessional here today, ladies and gentlemen.
yeah. So I've seen the worst, and I hope so at least. So back in around 1998 or something, coming out of high school, you always try to get a job, and many of us worked in call centers. I've outsourced call centers or call centers within telcos and banks and everything.
Yeah.
And so I will call that the contact center age, where everything was about having a cost center, a very I would say inside out approach to customer service. And also, 80% of all customer interactions was on the phone. And then in 2008, you actually saw companies like Salesforce and Zendesk introducing tickets. So they actually took the idea that email had became big, and all the big call center vendors from the contact center age, they hadn't really moved into that space. So they were really good at doing calls like Avaya, Cisco, etc.
Yeah.
But hadn't seen the light of emails. And as companies after the financial crunch wanted to deflect, maybe find that silver bullet of a channel, which email is, where you can actually choose when to respond and how to route. Ticketing systems was amazing, and actually it transitioned from being a B2B tech support platform where you have a ticket email going back and forth, so kind of very technical, complex problems, and then it's in some weird way, I would say, migrated into all other verticals, B2C marketplaces, enterprise, SMB. Well done by Zendesk, and Freshdesk also came around. But honestly, it didn't solve the problem for the end consumer. It just made the everyday lives better for the brands and the companies, and to some extent for the agents, at least for maybe 5 years, because then something else happened. And the thing happening was, of course, the conversational approach to communication between human beings came around with Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, iMessage, you go on. So the way normal people communicate actually became a requester, or it became a need for normal consumers on the way to engage with brands as well.
Would you include kind of SMS in that as well? Because SMS has always been the kind of the poor cousin in all of this, and it's been around for longer than anything, really, when it comes to mobile phones.
Yeah, definitely. So whether it's in pure SMS or an iMessage, definitely also fits into the whole messaging or conversational age. So all of a sudden, you saw very old legacy way of engaging with brands like phone. It's still about 55 or 60% of the world's customer engagement is still over phone, even though it's been doomed or seen as a dead channel for many years. And email is still the second largest, but messaging is exploding in many ways. It's everything from WeChat to WhatsApp, etc. So all of a sudden, you have a situation where you need to be, as a brand, as a company, you need to be able to engage with your customers or consumers on many channels. And the problem is when you're sitting in separate, disconnected systems, and you also need to, have an empathy about your customers, the sentiment and everything, it's actually going to be very difficult when you're sitting in 3 different systems. And as every time there's a new channel coming, you almost need a new system to engage with these channels. So it just makes it very difficult, and hence in the conversational age, you need a conversational platform to engage with your customers, but also to give your agents, customer service agents, a tool where they actually can engage in a conversational, friendly, and empathic way with consumers, because that's what they require today. of all ages, so to speak.
I mean, but is that what do you call it? I mean, so let me back up a little bit, because you actually said, you talk about kind of like the addition of channels. You have to be in all these kind of different channels and stuff. And I was thinking about that and just thinking, now that's a piece of kind of like almost like, that's a narrative, call it what you will, a narrative or a rhetoric, a piece of rhetoric that floats around the industry, that you have to be in all these different channels. And you go, so you can argue on the one hand, you go, yes, you probably should try and be in all these channels or be where your customers are. But, sometimes it causes more problems than it solves. And actually look at kind of some of these, the big players, the people that we all kind of hold up as being the ones that are delivering great service or experience and stuff. And many of them aren't on a lot of channels. So I guess my question is like, is it about the numbers of channels and having them all connected? Or is it just about kind of delivering better service, a better experience in a bit more of a connected, but it doesn't need to be super uber connected across all channels. It's just being great at what you do. And like you say, being a bit more empathic and a bit more, kind of like quick to respond, easy to respond, and efficient, and so on and so forth.
I think it's a good point. You have two sides of it. So basically, you can have a fintech company, or you can have a direct-to-consumer brand. They have maybe different priority on channels, for instance. But again, if it's very urgent, whether it's an airline or it's a fintech company or whatever, you would, as a person, like to grab the phone, sitting in your car, fixing an urgent problem. Sometimes just having messaging or email or both can be a challenge. So even, if you have a brand only going for in-app messaging on WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger,
right,
you still need that platform, as you say, where you can connect the different data from your CRM and, from sentiment systems and CX to drive that to the right agent at the right time, or automate at the right time, because you can really piss off a customer by automating if his sentiment is very negative, and he's, by the way, cancel his subscription on Netflix or whatever. So you're right. That is why we drive this through the customer friendship vision, saying, normal friends, and we today we have been engaging on email and SMS, and now we're on Zoom.
Right.
Of course, because I was difficult and postponed our meeting here. And that is how human beings are doing it. So yes, you can try to dictate that you only want to engage with your customers on email or WhatsApp or in your app. But honestly, I don't believe that is great customer service, even though you're really good at doing it on the in-app or the WhatsApp.
Right.
So I think regardless, you don't have to be on all channels. Definitely, that's a good point. But you need to be equally strong on the channels that your consumers prefer, or at least expect that you are on.
Yeah,
according to urgency or according to the situation, and you can trigger that for instance, with a technology like Dixa.
Yeah.
So you don't just all the time present the phone number and trigger the chat. So you can do many things according to the situation. I think that's probably the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, because I'm always of the mind that's like, I try and advocate for people to kind of to be very deliberate about the choices that they make about the channels that they want to kind of use and engage with their customers. But it's also a deliberate choice to be great at a handful or a few channels rather than average at a lot. Because let's face it, you talked about the contact center environment being a cost center. And yes, we might be kind of 20 years on or 30 years on from that type of that time. And we've been talking for the longest time about how we need to move that from being seen as a purely a cost center into something which is has a bit more of a strategic importance to the business, and therefore produces its own investment, its ROI, and so on and so forth. but yet,
or even as a necessity to growth, right?
Well,
It's a
indeed.
necessity to driving a brand. It's such a big inherent part of your brand value, and of course your customer journey and customer experience as
completely.
Whole. So you can't build a direct to consumer brand without it today, or a
No,
fintech brand.
I think that's absolutely right, and I think the thing is that going, but yet. Some of the big established kind of players who are kind of like who dominate that sort of some of the space and are using some of the current engagement kind of platforms. They might be adding channels, but they're not necessarily kind of increasing their investment. So they're almost trying to do more with the same amount in many ways. So you end up with kind of diminishing resources, or the same number of resources kind of like spread a bit more thinly across an increasing number of channels. And that's kind of why we end up I think we end up with lack of significant or material improvement in some of the experiences that many customers are getting, and which then creates opportunities for people like yourselves to come in and disrupt the market. I believe.
Exactly, and I think talking about the conversational age again, and customer service being the new marketing, as one of the Forbes editors wrote last year in an interesting article, by the way. I think that's very true, but you still need to see that a phone call or email, for that matter, is also a conversation. Conversational age is not just about messaging. Messaging is still only about 10 to 15%, on a rough average across the board for how brands engage. And then you see some brands like fintechs, the 80% is live chat and messaging. So you have that complicated, I would say, mix. But if you treat everything as a conversation, and it also for the agent experience, because we always forget the agent experience. We always talk about customer experience. That's great.
Yeah.
But if you have a bad agent experience and sitting in different tabs or different screens with a horrible, speaking of the things I built 20 years ago on top of Avaya, so sorry for that again, then you will never be able to drive customer empathy or true customer engagement. It's simply impossible.
So I mean, I think you're absolutely right, kind of, Mads, because I'm always kind of like, I always say that the thing that I'm primarily interested in are organizations that produce better outcomes for both their customers and their people. That's it. So I believe if you get both sides kind of right, that you're going to give yourself a good chance of building a healthy, sustainable, kind of growing kind of business. And so as you say, getting the agent experience kind of like right is kind of going to help you get the customer experience right. So I wanted to drill in on that a little bit, because because it's all very well talking about different types of technology and terms and everything else, and that can all seem slightly abstract. I guess, can you talk me through kind of like sort of what's different from your kind of about your approach, and almost like through an agent's eyes? Because if I think about the people that might be listening to this and listening to you talk, they'll be thinking, oh, okay, another platform, that's kind of fair enough. Why is it different, sort of thing? What are my people going to see that's different? How's it going to feel from my people's perspective? How is it going to be simpler and easier to do, and so on and so forth? Because then we can start to visualize where the delta is, if you like, between where we're now and where we need to be.
Exactly, and that's the whole key, because what we experienced since we launched globally back in January 2018 was what we built actually with some of the leading e-commerce players in the Nordics was actually focused extremely on the agent and also the manager experience, of course, but primarily the agent experience, because what we realized, we came from the business. This is my fourth customer service tech company, so to speak. We knew all the players very well, and we knew their strengths and their weaknesses.
Right.
But we also knew that the customers, they believed that any of those players coming from either what we call the call center kings or the ticketing masters or the messaging gurus, they would claim that they had the unified agent experience, the omni-channel platform, and all these things that we've been talking about Avaya talked about this when I was 20.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody knows that the companies and also their amazing customer service heroes and agents, they want a better life, basically.
Right.
But it's very, very hard to do when your DNA is coming from an email, synchronized way of dealing with engagement, or it's a very real-time platform with phone calls, for instance. Then it's very, very hard as a technology vendor to actually build that unified experience for the agent, where everything, whether it's an SMS, whether it's a WeChat or email, actually acts like a conversation, a natural, personalized conversation in the same interface. That's actually harder to build than you should believe, because you need one data platform where you can grab all the data. You read one routing engine that will route, that doesn't give a damn what type of channel it actually is, or what type of conversation. And that's why we build it from scratch with the customers, with the agents. And, that was very painful and very bumpy. And those customers are still with us today, which is quite amazing. So thank you to Interflora and Saxo.com and Bosch and everything. So I really believe that's the major difference. I mean, if we look at G2, it's not to do a sales pitch here, but G2, many of our reviews there is about the agents, real live users of the Dixa platform. They talk about how to make their lives better. They love their Dixa, Rafa in the UK, the bicycle racing brand.
Yeah,
talks about one screen wonder. So of course it was very intentionally done by us, but we're very proud that we actually succeeded, because this was this was my biggest concern when founding Dixa, saying, can we actually build a disruptive platform, taking point of departure from the agent and actually succeeding in maybe eventually disrupting 3 major vendor industries, all of them several $1 billion worth, and very powerful players.
Right.
By starting at the agent experience. Instead, as you mentioned in the beginning, where we discussed a little bit about the Punk CX, instead of focusing on your own tech and comparing yourself to Salesforce or Cisco all the time, doing it actually very pragmatic and talking to the real end users. So
right. So let me kind of be clear here. You're not kind of this is almost like it's a very clever way of actually connecting all the dots in a clever way in a clever way, in terms of you've got a channel agnostic sort of layer, and then a data layer and routing layer and so on and so forth. But it doesn't mean to say that you have to get rid of your traditional CRM system or this, that, or the other. It's like you're just kind of basically pulling it all together and sort of synchronizing it, so it's all in one place, and it's pulling the right sort of data from the right sort of places, so you can have cross-channel conversations that makes it feel connected. So you might be on the phone one day, but maybe on follow-up on WhatsApp the next day, and actually it's all synced together, so it feels like you're talking to kind of having one ongoing conversation. Is that right?
That's actually one part of it. Yes, you can definitely thread it all. So it's kind of a holistic approach to all the conversations you maybe had with Rafa or any brand.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing where we really differentiate is on the speed and accuracy. So instead of, we have this timeline where you can go say, back in January I had a phone call, and the other day I had a WhatsApp, and it's very clearly linked together in the same customer record. But we are not focused so much about the customer record. We are not a replacement CRM system as some of our competitors are in the US, for instance.
Yeah.
We are conversational platforms, so we're almost a WhatsApp and so much more on steroids for a high scale of conversations. So you only have the bare minimum and necessary things in the center of the agent interface, and then on the right side showing the data that is relevant for this conversation.
Right. Okay. That's what I wanted to make clear. It's like going, we're
not threading everything.
Yeah. So this is not another kind of CRM plus kind of thing. This is actually, it's a platform that kind of that brings a lot of these things together and can work with all these different sort of like channels and also other sort of like kind of CRM platforms. It's like it's almost a bit like a 20, people talked about, it feels to me like people talked about a UC layer that like your Avaya and Cisco's kind of talk about, but actually for the 21st century, and like a messaging conversational approach to things.
Yeah, that's very well said. But also, yes, on top of your e-commerce platform, if you want to say it like that, or your Salesforce CRM system, pulling the data from whatever relevant sources to route or automate, because many things can be automated, standard questions and etc. But we are replacing the ticketing systems out there, the call center systems, and also the live chat systems. But of course, we embrace WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger. Those are our friends.
Okay, fair enough.
So we're not an overlay. We are a new platform, but not a CRM system. So hence being a customer engagement platform.
Okay, so I mean, now we've talked about that kind of in terms of kind of the a little bit from an agent side. Now, if we flipped it around and talk about it from a customer side, you mentioned some of the people that have been with you from the early days, like your Interflowers and your Bosches of this kind of world, which are, I guess, are two very, very different sort of businesses. One is very short-term, short delivery, or short pickup, very perishable stuff, and one is. I'm assuming that is the appliance side of the Bosch business?
It's actually the automotive side.
So it's the automotive side. So it's actually kind of more in the industrial kind of engineering sort of side of things, which is much more B2B.
It is more the repair shops and that whole things in Europe. So it is actually with end consumers, but it's also an internal part of the business.
Okay, so can you tell me about kind of their experience, kind of like, because what I'm also really interested in rather, is they've obviously been doing something somehow, some way before talking to you, and then I've gone on this journey with you. Can you tell me kind of almost a bit like, briefly in terms of where they were before and now, and now they've kind of used their platform, and so what have they gotten out of all this? What's been the real business benefits for them?
Definitely. So let's take Interfloor. Famous brand. It's very much about driving a great customer experience when things go right, but also when things go wrong. It's very painful. So they came from 3 different systems, basically. They came from Outlook for email. They came from Avaya call center solution, and then have a third-party live chat. So classic, like 8 out of 10 companies we see, they have 3 or 4 disconnected systems, and they have now also come into the conversational age where they're in consumers. They require that they are available on several channels, and they want to route, the VIP customer to the right agent and these things. Right. So what they have, basically they've been lifting the CSAT, the customer experience by 20% plus. They have lifted they also do sell other things than flowers, actually, so chocolate and wine and beer and everything. So they lifted their cross-sell significantly when they have them in conversation, so to speak. Right. They also use this from a commercial perspective. And finally, maybe, and to some extent, maybe the most important thing, they're able to handle much more conversations and therefore much more customers without waiting time. So their average handling time has gone down. Their first time response is increased with 35%. So you have on all I would not call them classic metrics, but of course important efficiency and productivity metrics. Yeah, we have really seen an improvement. But maybe even most important for the brands, these were the brands that we built the platform with back in 2017. But since the global launch in 2018, I would rather take some of the this kind of scale examples like Too Good To Go, which is the world's fastest moving or growing food waste app. Yeah. So they started about 10 agents sitting in Zendesk and Aircall and stuff, and find out that they had kind of a 2-sided challenge. They had all the many now today millions of users of the app. Too Good To Go. They are food waste fighters. So they make sure that all the food from restaurants and supermarkets, they actually can be resold through an app, and they are now in 16 countries, now launching in the US, also quite big in the UK. And they all, already at that point where they were in 4 countries with 10 agents, they saw that not only the channel challenge, but also the data challenge of actually using this data so they could both have the restaurants and supermarkets side as part of the engagement platform, but also the many requests and conversations coming from their consumers into one. They already there needed to do something else, but then sitting in 3 disconnected, siloed systems. And today, they are 170 agents doing all customer engagement in Dixa, and they're about 600 or 700 people in total. And now, as mentioned, opening in their office in the US. So these brands, I would say, where they have the same challenges as Bosch and Interfloor, but they're also growing massively. There you will already at the point of maybe 10, 15 customer service agents, you will see the challenge being real and the pain being real. And we see, many of these Rafa was the same. They were even a pure play Zendesk customer, had the same challenge. They wanted to create this one Rafa team. They also really liked the whole customer friendship approach. But they had the same challenges. They had cherry picking of ticketing systems. They had separate phone calls coming in separate tabs. It sounds very basic, but the negative effect of the customer and agent experience hits the bottom line and the brand value.
Sure. No, that's cool. Thank you for that. I mean, that actually it puts the real economics kind of to the fore of some of the, based on some of the results that you've achieved with some of the brands that you've worked with. So, I mean, Mads, if we can switch gears a little bit, because you're right in the thick of it. You're trying to do some new things and try and get people to kind of adopt kind of new kind of like ways of doing things, particularly in, how they approach service and experience. I mean, what does the future look like? I mean, what does the future look like for service, for you, for your customers? And so what are some of the big challenges, ahead, looking at it from your perspective?
So that's a very good question. So we've of course given it a lot of thought also as we are laying out our strategy for 2020 and 21. And what we see is actually that these amazing customer service people, agents, I think their job will change significantly. That's one of the first things that we focus on, hence the focus on the agent experience as well. So all the repetitive tasks, all the boring stuff will, in a smart and friendly and preferably also an engaging way, will be automated. So you don't need to answer questions. Where's my order? When can I cancel my subscription? All these things. So the job of being a customer service hero or customer service agent will rise in complexity, but also will be much more a much more attractive job, an interesting job, and much more important also for the company. So you will Dixa platform, for instance, and other technologies, they will be able to only route the conversations that has a complexity and a need or an opportunity worth speaking to a human being. And doing that with all the enrichment and all the context that is needed for carrying out, whether that's a very angry customer or it's a retention matter, it's an off cross sales, or it's a good advice. I think that will be one of the things we already seeing now. So Goodie Box, which is growing and they call their customer service team Team Happiness. Too Good to Go is the food waste warriors, etc. So you are seeing this change going on for all the new brands, but also the brands that's transformed digitally. They need to see that the customer service team is probably the most important division or team in the organization.
Yeah, and that's a big mind shift for people.
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of funny because I've been, I'm in the mix as well, and I've sort of been banging on about it, trying to be an advocate for both customers and and people working in sort of service related roles. for a while, and it's fascinating how much stuff we need to unlearn to be able to kind of move to that kind of point where we realize that this stuff is really important and the people that do it are really important. So it's not a simple thing to do.
No, and the agent, I agree, and the customer service agents or the customer service will be a very important asset, because when you don't have a conversation with the customer is not a transaction, it's actually a relation building thing, because in this world where everything is maybe automated and self-serviced and all these things, then you have to see it as a valuable thing. If you have a digitalized company where you actually can automate all the boring stuff, and then you have the very valuable conversations almost as a new currency that is much more worth than any banner or AdWord campaign. I think that's again back to customer friendship, as we talked about a lot, and also about customer service being the new marketing, as written in Forbes last year.
Yeah. So Mads, here's a quick question. A couple of quick questions before we kind of I sort of wrap up. Is we can have a rummage around some of this sort of stuff, and we can talk about kind of the new stuff that you're doing, the results that you're getting, and that's all very interesting and stuff. But as you know as well as I know, that sometimes just boiling it down to really simple stuff or really simple recommendations is kind of what people kind of really need and what they're looking for. So if I was to say to you, someone's listening to this or reading the highlights, and they are thinking, I really want to step up step out and stand out, improve my service experience that I'm delivering to my customers, improving that agent experience. What would be apart from going out and putting a call into Dixa, obviously, I don't want you to do that kind of like flagrant pitch or plug for your product, but what would be your best advice to them? Where should they start? What should they start either asking themselves or doing, or going investigating and learning about? Where should they start?
I think that's a very good point, and also a good question. I think that they need to start. Maybe they're already there, but many are. But start about their philosophy and DNA. I think it's very much linked into your pretty cool punk CX approach and ethos. Mm-hmm. You need to honestly, on C-level or executive level in your company, be faithful to your customer experience strategy, not just saying it because it's nice to say and the board or investors ask about your CSAT or your NPS scores. You need to really want to engage with your customers, and you need to do it in a way that is true to your brand, but also linked with what your consumers they expect of you. Right. If you don't want to do that investment and believe you can find a silver bullet like an email channel or a help center or whatever to fix it and deflect everything, then you can probably do that as a B2B brand and with a very narrow or niche customer segment. Fair enough. And no disrespect there, but if you're a consumer brand or marketplace or whatever, you really need to start there. Forget about the technology. Maybe talk more about punk CX, customer friendship. Yeah. Start there, because actually, to be honest, we are looking for all these brands that are either want to talk about that or have already done it. Otherwise, it won't make sense to go much further at this point, because you can't get, even though Dixa is an amazing platform, I have to say that, it doesn't make sense to implement if you don't have that CX strategy lined up, basically.
It's almost a bit like you got to figure who you are and what you're about first. Yeah. Get your philosophy right, and if you don't get that right, then it's like, well, you kind of it's very hard to set the direction and the tone, really.
Exactly. So you can see that all the modern brands, direct to consumer, fintech, food tech, whatever, the ones succeeding, at least, they're born with this DNA. Yeah. But all the other retailers and tech companies, they need to transform, and they have a big job ahead of them. They know it, but it's difficult for them to do, and also because they think that the technology part is so complex, because we're coming from a world where all this call center kings and also many of the ticketing masters, those projects have been siloed or they've been massively complex because they should be integrated with legacy systems and everything.
Yeah.
Today, you are actually able with SaaS and with more complete all-in-one platforms out there, whether it's in marketing or in customer service or in financials, you can actually almost start from scratch and implement in parallel, and then do it in one team, one brand, whatever, and then actually shut it all the rest down. You don't need to do all these rip and replace migration stuff.
Right.
SaaS has offered you the way, and APIs, by the way, that you can actually in parallel set this up very, very quickly.
Cool.
And I think that's still what we meet out there, even with smaller or medium-sized brands. Oh, that sounds like a very, very big Star Wars project. It will take years, and that. So modern technology can help you a lot, but you need to realize that it's not an obstacle. And if you have your DNA right, you can actually move quite quickly this way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think you're absolutely right. They kind of get the, if you figure out kind of what you're about and kind of like make sure you have the right sort of DNA, then it's like other things will take care of themselves or become much easier. You're not trying to put a square peg into a round hole in many ways. And I really like the idea that...
But you need to choose the right technology.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I also kind of like the idea is like you're kind of talking about you're always almost wanting to pick the brands that you work with, that they have that in place already, because otherwise your approach just might not be the right sort of fit for them.
Exactly, and many that are in digital transformation projects, they are actually having this on the agenda as well. They just need to understand that it's not that complicated if they just want to invest and get the right people on board. Because you can't say we want to have the greatest customer service in the world for whatever industry if you don't provide your agents with the right technology.
Sure.
So that makes complete sense. That's just how it is.
Cool. So, Mads, anything that you want to add before I ask you my two last questions?
I think that's. I think we went through some good stuff here.
Good. So, here's the thing. I've been since I've published it thank you for mentioning it. Since I kind of like brought out the new book called Punk CX. I've been doing my own little bit of social research on the end of these interviews. And what I've been doing is I've been asking people two questions about Punk CX. One is to do with a word and one is to do with a brand. And they're quick fire ones. So if I was to say to you, Punk and CX, and which word would come to mind for you?
Can it be a brand or could it be?
Well, no. I'll ask you about I'll ask you about the brand next. Right now, okay. It's almost like a word association game. If I said like Punk and CX, you would think what word?
I would think revolution.
Brilliant. And then if I said that also the same thing but applied to a brand, I said Punk and CX and a brand, which brand would come to mind?
I would say Airbnb.
Perfect. There you go. That's part of my kind of like my as I say my social research. What I'm trying to do is I'm almost kind of doing a bit of a it's like crowdsourcing. This is kind of what it means, because the idea that I'm trying to do as well is like when I think about kind of Punk CX is that sometimes people kind of jump to conclusions about what it could mean or what it does mean, and I'm just trying to. If I crowdsource a whole bunch of things, a bunch of words, then it gives people kind of the comfort that it actually can mean lots of different things to lots of different people. And so that's what I'm trying to do. So kind of crowdsourcing, kind of like perspectives on what kind of Punk and CX is supposed to be. So thank you for that.
My pleasure. What would you put today?
What would I put today? I would crumbs. I'd be daring. So almost like part of like that dare to be different. I would say something that is daring, that is willing to challenge kind of norms in terms of what they do and how they do it. because that's the sort of stuff that is just like on the edge, but it's also challenging. It doesn't need to be revolutionary, so it doesn't need to be like completely turn something upside down. It could just be on the edge of what the existing norm is.
I like that. That makes sense. And what about a brand?
Oh, a brand. Oh crumbs! Which brand? I'll tell you which brand I really like. And I know the owner, but I wear some of their product, and that is Hyatt Denim in Wales.
Ooh, sounds cool.
They talk about the denim that they make. It's based in Cardigan, and Cardigan used to be one of the Europe's largest producers of denim. In terms of the manufacture of denim, until most of it got offshored to the Far East. And what David and Claire, his wife, have done is reset up a denim manufacturing facility in Cardigan to try and almost do an economic regeneration project. But rather than actually kind of wanting to produce kind of like masses of denim, they've decided they're going to make, rather than lots of jeans, the best jeans that they can possibly make. So their jeans aren't cheap, but they're really good. And they're definitely definitely worth checking out, because it's got like a story to it, and it's got art and history, meaning, and all of that sort of stuff. And they're like going, yeah, well, this is what we do.
That's pretty cool. That's actually a little bit, not similar, but it reminds me a little bit of how the Rafa story also came around. Yeah, it's cool with these direct-to-consumer brands having their own story.
Yeah, and so anyway, Mads, thank you so much for your time today, and for telling us about your story. Don't go spending all the money at once.
Don't worry.
I'm just saying. But congratulations on the kind of the success to date. Good luck with the with the future. And thank you for sharing your time and your experience with us today. That's been great.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure speaking, and looking forward to catch up again soon.
Well, that was cool. I hope you enjoyed it. I did, and I always do actually, because I always learn something new when I speak to some of these amazing people. It's always something new that I can incorporate into my writing, speaking, workshops, and other sort of advisory work that I do. Now, if you're interested in learning about any of that sort of stuff, then you can find out more about how I work with clients over at adrianswinscoe.com. But one final thing before I go, please consider heading over to iTunes or Spotify or whichever podcast platform you choose to use, and do leave a review. Every little helps, as we say. Anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for listening, and do tune in again soon. All the very best. Cheers. Bye.